Welcome to Hidden Variables, where we explore the unseen patterns that shape the human mind. Have you ever wondered why some people crave connection, yet push it away the moment it gets too close? Why conversations feel heavy and silence feels safer than being seen? This isn't coldness, it's conditioning. There's a hidden psychology behind emotional distance, and in this breakdown, we uncover why some hearts fear the very thing they need most. Have you ever wondered why some people can be surrounded by others, yet still feel painfully alone? Why conversations feel forced, smiles feel rehearsed, and every attempt at closeness ends in quiet withdrawal? There's a certain kind of loneliness that doesn't come from a lack of people. It comes from a deep disconnect between the mind and the heart. For those who struggle to connect, relationships don't feel like comfort. They feel like confusion. The warmth of closeness often feels like danger, and vulnerability feels like exposure. This isn't a lack of interest or effort. It's a psychological defense, built layer by layer from years of emotional misunderstanding, rejection, or unhealed wounds. Behind every quiet withdrawal is a nervous system that learned connection equals pain. Behind every distant smile is a story of trust once broken. And behind every person who can't seem to connect lies a deeper truth. Sometimes isolation isn't avoidance. It's protection, because the human mind doesn't fear love. It fears what love once cost. When connection becomes a threat, the human mind begins to confuse love with danger. It's not something that happens suddenly. It's a slow psychological conditioning that begins in childhood and quietly matures into adulthood. For some people, closeness once meant vulnerability, and vulnerability led to pain. Maybe love came with judgment, maybe trust was met with betrayal, or maybe every attempt to open up was met with silence. Over time, the nervous system learned a painful lesson: connection equals risk. So instead of seeking closeness, the mind begins to protect itself by retreating. What looks like disinterest on the surface is actually defense, a deeply ingrained instinct to avoid being hurt again. The brain's job is survival, not happiness. When it detects emotional danger, even in subtle ways, it activates the same protective mechanisms it would for physical threat. So when someone who once felt rejected, ignored, or abandoned tries to connect again, their body may respond with anxiety, tension, or numbness. It's not a conscious choice. It's muscle memory of the heart. The very act of opening up feels unsafe, because the subconscious remembers what happened the last time they tried. They might crave intimacy, but simultaneously push it away, creating a painful contradiction that even they don't fully understand. This is why some people seem distant or emotionally unavailable. They're not heartless. They're protecting the last, unbroken parts of themselves. They've built walls around their emotions because walls feel safer than wounds. Beneath the silence lies a mind that is hypervigilant to rejection, constantly scanning for signs that someone might leave, lie, or disappoint them. And because their nervous system expects abandonment, they often recreate it, pulling away first to avoid the pain of being left. It's not coldness, it's control. By withdrawing, they get to decide when the pain comes, even if it means living in emotional isolation. But the tragedy is that protection also becomes imprisonment. The same walls that keep out pain also keep out love. Over time, the mind forgets the difference between safety and solitude. Connection begins to feel like exposure, and the body confuses peace with loneliness. The truth is, they're not afraid of others. They're afraid of feeling what connection once cost them. Healing begins the moment they realize that connection isn't the enemy, and vulnerability doesn't have to hurt. It can, instead, become the doorway back to safety, one that opens slowly, with patience and trust. Emotional distance doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's often born in the earliest years of life, in the quiet spaces between what was needed and what was received. A child learns about connection not through words, but through presence, through the warmth of being held, the safety of being seen, and the consistency of being understood. When those experiences are missing, inconsistent, or painful, the mind adapts. Instead of reaching out, it turns inward. Instead of expressing, it suppresses. This is how emotional distance begins, not as rebellion, but as survival. When a child's emotions are dismissed or ignored, the brain rewires itself to expect disconnection. The message becomes clear: my feelings are too much, or worse, my feelings don't matter. So they start to hide parts of themselves. The soft, emotional parts that once reached for comfort. Over time, hiding becomes habit. The child grows into an adult who still carries the same pattern, now masked by independence, business, or intellectual control. They appear composed, self-reliant, even confident. But underneath lies an old, unhealed ache, the fear that closeness will only lead to disappointment. This emotional blueprint doesn't just affect how they feel, it affects how they relate. When someone tries to get close, their subconscious recalls the old pain of being unseen. Their mind whispers warnings: don't get too close, they'll leave. Don't open up, you'll get hurt. So, they maintain distance. They keep relationships on the surface, avoid deep conversations, or sabotage intimacy before it has a chance to grow. It's not that they don't want connection, they just don't trust it. Love feels unpredictable, and unpredictability feels unsafe. What makes this so complex is that they may not even realize it's happening. They might believe they're simply not social, or that they value solitude. But beneath that narrative lies an emotional defense, formed long before they had words for it. Their distance is a memory of unmet needs replaying through adult behavior. Yet, the same mind that learned to protect can also learn to heal. When they begin to understand that the distance isn't who they are, it's what they learned, something shifts. Slowly, the walls that once felt like protection start to feel like prisons. And with compassion, not judgment, they can begin to unlearn the fear that closeness always leads to pain, discovering that connection, when safe and mutual, can finally feel like home. Detachment is often mistaken for indifference, but in truth, it's armor, carefully crafted to protect a heart that has been hurt too many times. When emotions become overwhelming or unsafe, the mind finds ways to distance itself from them. This is not weakness, it's intelligence born out of pain. The human psyche learns to survive by numbing what it can't control. What begins as a temporary shield against hurt slowly becomes a permanent way of living. The person no longer feels deeply, not because they don't want to, but because feeling deeply once led to heartbreak, rejection, or chaos. This invisible armor of detachment can look calm, rational, even admirable from the outside. They appear unbothered, steady, emotionally composed. But beneath that surface lies a mind that's constantly on guard. Every emotional situation is scanned for danger. Every moment of closeness is evaluated for risk. They've learned that emotional dependence equals vulnerability, and vulnerability equals pain. So they create distance, not out of coldness, but out of self-preservation. It's the nervous system's quiet way of saying, I won't let that happen again. The tragedy is that this armor not only blocks pain, it also blocks love, joy, and genuine connection. You can't selectively numb emotions. When you shut out fear and sadness, you also shut out happiness and intimacy. Over time, this emotional detachment becomes a cage that keeps them safe from harm, but also safe from healing. Relationships feel one-sided, conversations lack depth, and even moments of success feel strangely hollow. The very thing built to protect them ends up isolating them from the experiences that make life meaningful. Deep down, there's still a longing, a quiet ache to be understood, to feel again, to connect without fear. But the armor doesn't come off easily. It's not just a habit, it's a learned survival mechanism. Breaking it requires patience, safety, and the courage to face emotions long buried. Healing begins when they realize that detachment isn't strength. It's self-protection that has overstayed its purpose. When they start to trust that not every closeness leads to pain, the armor slowly cracks. And through those cracks, light begins to enter. Not all at once, but enough to remind them that feeling is not their enemy. It's their return to being human again. Vulnerability is often described as weakness, but for someone who has been emotionally wounded, it feels like exposure. A dangerous openness that once led to rejection, humiliation, or abandonment. The body remembers those moments even if the mind tries to forget. So when faced with opportunities to open up again, the nervous system resists. The heart races, the voice hesitates, and the instinct to withdraw takes over. This is not fear of people. It's fear of the pain that once followed being real. Vulnerability feels unsafe, because the brain has learned to equate honesty with hurt and closeness with loss. Many people who struggle to connect deeply carry invisible scars from times they were punished for being open. Maybe they expressed a feeling and were told to get over it. Maybe they trusted someone who later used that truth against them. These experiences teach the subconscious that emotional exposure is dangerous, so they build walls, not to keep others out, but to keep themselves safe inside. They become skilled at appearing fine, hiding their needs behind a composed face, laughing at their own pain before anyone else can. It becomes a reflex. Control the narrative before anyone gets close enough to cause harm. But the price of safety is distance. You can't truly be loved without being seen, and you can't be seen without being vulnerable. The irony is painful. The very strategy meant to prevent suffering becomes the source of it. They crave connection, yet run from the only thing that makes connection possible: emotional openness. They long for someone to understand them, but never reveal enough for understanding to happen. Every relationship feels like a performance, safe, predictable, but hollow. Healing begins when they learn that vulnerability doesn't always have to end in pain. It's not about exposing everything at once. It's about allowing small truths to be shared with safe people. Each moment of honest expression that isn't met with rejection begins to rewire the brain's understanding of safety. Over time, the heart starts to loosen its grip, realizing that being known isn't the same as being broken. True strength lies not in hiding emotion, but in embracing it. Knowing that vulnerability isn't the risk of being hurt again, but the path toward finally being free. There's a painful paradox that exists in many hearts. The deep desire to be close to someone, paired with an equally deep fear of what that closeness might bring. This cycle of wanting connection, but fearing it, is one of the most misunderstood psychological patterns. It's not confusion or emotional immaturity. It's the mind's attempt to balance two powerful instincts: the need for love and the need for protection. When someone has been hurt, betrayed, or abandoned, their nervous system learns to associate love with danger. So even as they crave connection, their body resists it. They reach out and then pull back. They open up and then shut down. It's not inconsistency, it's survival. This push and pull dynamic often creates emotional exhaustion. One moment, they want to be close, to feel the warmth of belonging. The next, they feel suffocated, anxious, or afraid. The very intimacy they seek begins to feel like a threat to their safety. Their mind whispers that connection is risky, that people always leave, that the pain of loss is worse than the pain of loneliness. So they build distance, not because they don't care, but because caring feels dangerous. They tell themselves they're better off alone, but deep down, they ache for the very closeness they avoid. It's an endless loop, a longing that never fully resolves. This cycle is often rooted in early attachment wounds. When a child's experience with love is unpredictable, sometimes nurturing, sometimes rejecting, their brain develops a confused relationship with connection. Love becomes both a source of comfort and a source of pain. As adults, they carry that contradiction into every relationship, unconsciously testing whether closeness will hurt or heal. Their behavior can seem cold or inconsistent, but what they're really saying beneath it all is, "Please stay close, but don't hurt me." Breaking this cycle requires gentle awareness and patience. The goal isn't to force connection, but to rebuild trust in it. It starts with recognizing that not everyone is the past. That love, when safe and consistent, doesn't have to feel like a threat. Slowly, through genuine care and emotional safety, the walls can soften. The fear that once guarded the heart can transform into understanding, and in that understanding, connection no longer feels like something to survive. It begins to feel like something to belong to. Healing the fear of being truly seen is one of the most profound journeys a person can take. It's not simply about learning to trust others. It's about learning to trust that your true self is worthy of being loved. For many, the fear of being seen comes from a lifetime of hiding emotions, hiding needs, hiding the parts of themselves that were once rejected or misunderstood. Over time, this concealment becomes second nature. They show only the polished version of themselves, believing that being authentic will lead to judgment or abandonment. But underneath that performance lives a quiet exhaustion, a longing to finally be accepted without having to pretend. The truth is, being seen feels dangerous to those who were once punished for being themselves. Maybe they were told they were too emotional, too sensitive, too needy. Maybe every time they tried to be real, they were met with criticism or silence. So they learned to wear masks, masks of confidence, humor, independence, or indifference. These masks kept them safe, but they also kept them lonely. Because when you hide your truth, the connections you build are only surface, deep. People may like the version of you they see, but not the one you truly are. And that kind of loneliness, being unseen even when surrounded, cuts the deepest. Healing begins with courage. The courage to let someone witness your truth in small, safe moments. It starts with letting down the mask, just a little, allowing honesty to replace performance. It means admitting, even quietly, this is who I really am, and realizing that the world doesn't collapse when you do. The nervous system, conditioned to expect rejection, slowly learns a new reality, that authenticity can coexist with safety. Each time you allow yourself to be seen without judgment, your mind begins to trust connection again. True healing isn't about being open with everyone. It's about being open with the right ones. People who meet your vulnerability with respect, not exploitation. People who see your flaws and stay. Over time, being seen stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like relief. You begin to understand that real connection isn't built through perfection. It's built through truth. And when you finally stop hiding, you don't just connect with others. You reconnect with yourself, the version of you that's been waiting all along to come home. In the end, the struggle to connect isn't a flaw, it's a scar. Every wall, every withdrawal, every moment of silence hides a story of someone who once reached out and was met with pain. But the truth is, human beings were never meant to live unseen. Connection is not a luxury. It's a psychological need, as vital as air. The fear that keeps people distant is the same fear that keeps them from healing, because the moment you allow yourself to be known, even just a little, something begins to shift. The walls don't crumble all at once, but they start to breathe. The numbness softens, and the heart begins to remember what safety feels like. The journey isn't about forcing connection, it's about unlearning the belief that closeness will destroy you. It's realizing that not everyone will repeat your past, and not every touch will reopen your wounds. Healing starts when you stop running from love and start recognizing that you deserve it, not for who you pretend to be, but for who you truly are. And as terrifying as it feels to open up, it's within that fear that freedom waits, because connection doesn't just happen when someone else sees you. It happens when you finally stop hiding from yourself. The psychology of people who struggle to connect isn't about weakness, it's about survival. But survival isn't living. You can only protect your heart for so long before it starts craving the very thing it's been avoiding: to be seen, to be understood, to be loved. And the moment you stop guarding your pain like a secret, you begin to discover that connection, real human connection, was never the enemy. It was the cure.